This is HealthCall Online, the place for extended versions of interviews you hear on our weekly radio broadcast, the HealthCall Radio Hour. It is happening right now. Your body is under attack. There is a world of bacteria, viruses, and even fungus out there trying to take you down. Fortunately, an amazing immune system of yours does a pretty good job. Well, there are some ways you can help it and also some things you could do that may be hurting your immune system. Let's dig into all of this with a friend of the program, Greg Russell, pharmacist and founder at Fort Wayne Custom RX, the health wellness, the compounding and wellness pharmacy up at 425 East DuPont Road in Fort Wayne. Greg, I am fascinated by the immune system. It's an amazing thing that our bodies have developed. What are we doing that actually hurts our immune system?
Well, you're right, Lee. Well, it's great to be here again. But, the immune system is just really complicated system, but and its magnificence of complication, it's amazing how simple things can actually improve our immune system. We don't often think about getting enough sleep and enough rest, enough water, enough fruits and vegetables, enough really a balanced diet. But the immune system, it thrives on balance. And so when things are out of balance, it creates a lot of havoc. So, this time of the year is the year, that the flu season takes off and the cough and cold starts taking off. And we have these wonderful vaccines to help try to keep our systems up, but there's so much more we can do if we kind of pay attention to our health. And so, probably one of the things that's probably really bothers medicine right now is the overuse of antibiotics. We've talked about antibiotics in the past. They're marvelous. They really are very extremely effective, and they've increased, the longevity on the planet. It used to be that back in 1900, the average age was 40 something. So many people died of infectious disease. But on the flip side of it, we've gotten in our society, we're probably using, depending on antibiotics. And as you know, Lee, overuse of antibiotics can be detrimental to our health.
Yeah, for a number of reasons, not the least of which is the disruption that can occur in our gut microbiome and the impact
Absolutely.
that has on our health. But also, there's that fear of these antibiotics losing their effectiveness. And in fact, we're seeing that right now. The resistant bacteria have developed. What are we doing wrong at home that makes that problem
Sure.
worse?
Well, first of all, have to always make sure we're getting the right antibiotic. And these bugs are very, very smart. So there's a couple things that we need to keep in mind with antibiotics. One is they are totally ineffective for viruses. And unfortunately, a lot of times we're being prescribed antibiotics when we don't need antibiotics. And I know the American Pediatric Association has really looked at things like ear infections with infants and children, and they've put more stringent guidelines. Whereas, we used to throw people on amoxicillin and augmentin and Keflex suspension and all those type of antibiotics indiscriminately, and we've kind of caused some of our own problems, because what happens is twofold. If you don't take the antibiotics completely, you're not going to kill all the bugs. And if you don't kill all the bugs, the strong bugs, the resistant bugs, continue to grow and thrive. So if the doctor says, take this antibiotic for 10 days, you need to take that antibiotic for 10 days. Don't stop at day 3, 4, or 5 when you're starting to feel better and say, oh, well, I've got an antibiotic for the next time. That's not doing you any good. It's just training those bugs. The better bugs are going to the more resistant bugs are going to thrive, and then you just have a further complication down the road.
Yeah. Tell me what you're thinking on whether we ought to be taking a probiotic when you take an antibiotic, because they might be disrupting those little good guys down in our gut.
Yeah, there's two things to keep in mind. First of all, when you do take a probiotic, you want to make sure you keep it kind of away from the antibiotic generally. Now, that's not going to be 100% reliable. I mean, some antibiotics obviously have a longer kill effect. So, but the thought is, at least if we're given some good probiotics, those are those good bacteria. The antibiotics are, they're shotguns. They're going to kill anything and everything. And we see a lot of immune system problems post-antibiotic use. In other words, when the immune system becomes disruptive, you're killing off those good bacteria, and, people start having diarrhea or other gut issues. And of course, the big bad bug is C. difficile, which grows with some of the really powerful antibiotics. So we want to start using probiotics I especially use Saccharomyces, which actually is not a probiotic. It's actually a yeast
Uh-huh.
that is it's not a yeast that's pathogenic. In other words, it's a good yeast and it helps crowd out and stop the C. difficile toxin, which grows from having too much kill. So let me back up here again, kind of confusing it. But if you take too many antibiotics, you'll kill your good bacteria. If the good bacteria die, then the bad bacteria, like C. difficile, will start to flourish.
Yeah, it's like bad guys moving into the neighborhood all at
Yeah,
once.
exactly.
They overwhelm. Yeah. You mentioned a moment ago that sleep is very important to maintain the health of your immune system. Why is that? What's happening when I sleep?
Yeah, well, what we do know is that our body has these different hormones that are being released at different times of the night. And that if you're getting a short sleep cycle, your body can't repair itself. And the immune system is intricately wrapped into sleep. And so we know, for example, that people that work third shift or people that get less than 5 hours, less than 6 hours probably of sleep are at higher health risk. Their immune system becomes more dysregulated. And of course, if you have a dysregulated immune system that's not potent enough, you're going to get infected. If you have an overactive immune system, you can have autoimmune disease.
Yeah, yeah, kind of that fine balance there. You've got to find just the right temperature, so to speak, the
So to say.
Goldilocks zone.
That's right.
And nature has given us a number of different compounds that can make that work better. I mean, there are plants and nutrients and other things that we've now learned that really do make a difference. So let's talk through some of those. And one of them that you and I have discussed before, and I think is really now that in my mind at least, there's just no doubt vitamin D plays a role,
Vitamin D is, the sunshine vitamin, right?
right?
We love to get our sunshine, and I love to get outside, but unfortunately, my job precludes that, and we're moving into that winter season.
Uh-huh.
So, vitamin D, there are vitamin D receptors on all your immune cells. And so when they're activated, they help activate the immune. They're modulators. In other words, again, trying to keep that immune system typically right in balance. And so it's important that we check our vitamin D levels. It's a simple blood test. Try to keep it in this 50 to 80 range, which is kind of, the sweet spot. Some doctors don't like to go much over 50. Other doctors want to get you up to 80, but 50 to 80 is kind of considered the sweet spot range. And, if you get your blood test, we can kind of help guide you as to how much vitamin D you need, typically.
Yeah, and we've talked about this in the past. I just want to repeat it here. It's a different deal. Everybody's body is different. And I have found that I need to take 2,000 units of D a day to keep my D level at just that 50 point.
Yep. And
And
I
some
have to take
people,
5,000. So,
yeah,
why, who knows? But it's
right.
just the way it is. Yeah.
But vitamin D is something of a risk for some people. Who needs to be very careful about that and talk with their doctor?
Yeah, well, I would say elderly patients need to be a little careful because there is there is a concern that too much vitamin D can cause calcium to just be displaced out of the bone and into the kidneys. So that's a problem. Also, people that suffer from parathyroid or thyroid disease, again, that regulates calcium. So we have to be kind of careful there. So, but generally, vitamin D, especially if we get in that zone, is considered very safe.
Yeah, and one of the primary roles vitamin D plays on our body, in addition to the immune system, is moving calcium into the bones.
That's
And
correct.
so that's important as we age. So tracking that with a blood test, they're fairly inexpensive. You can get them done at private labs. It's
Yeah, it's
really
like
not a
20
big
bucks,
deal.
25 bucks, I think.
Yeah, yeah,
Cheap.
it's
Yeah.
well worth doing. At least checking it once a year, I should
Yeah.
think. All right, so let's talk about the other one that many people already associate with their immune system, and that's vitamin C.
Vitamin C is an awesome vitamin. It's hard to be short on vitamin C. Unlike most mammals make vitamin C, humans do not. So it's very important. And vitamin C helps defend the immune system itself. It helps. It's a great antioxidant. So it kind of keeps the immune system healthy. It's antioxidant. So when the vitamin it kind of recycles the immune system, I guess is a good way of saying that. And it the immune system, like other molecules, can be broken down by free radicals. So vitamin C's job is to prevent free radical buildup in the body. And of course, you can get vitamin C in all kinds of things, fruit, and if you listen closely, some of these vitamins are going to have some of the same sources. Broccoli, spinach, sprouts, Brussels sprouts are all good sources also.
Yeah, it's people associate vitamin C with citrus fruit, but yeah, those green leafy vegetables also
Very
deliver
good.
a kind of
Yes.
a whopping load of vitamin C.
Mhm.
Um, Zinc is a mineral, not a vitamin, and many of us just don't get enough zinc. What role does it play in our immune system?
Well, zinc does a couple cool things. One thing is, 6 studies showed that when they added zinc to an antibiotic, when we were talking about antibiotics, that people that were severely sick did much better, and
Hmm.
the death rate went down in patients that were supplemented with zinc. So that's interesting in itself. And we know that zinc has this important role with quercetin, and the zinc itself has antiviral activity. So it's kind of cool because it helps mobilize the antibodies per se. So it does. It's very important. So we know people that tend to be low in zinc tend to have more mouth ulcers and things of that nature, and other viruses that pop out.
And you just mentioned there quercetin, which is a plant compound, but partners up with zinc very well. Tell me more about
Yeah,
quercetin.
we learned a lot about quercetin. I have one of my favorite products in my entire pharmacy has quercetin as one of the base products, and we used it for years for allergies.
Hmm.
And quercetin has multiple um, modes that it works in. And one of the things that it does is it works for histamine. It helps stop, it's a natural antihistamine. So I love it for that purpose because people don't get drowsy with it. But the
Yeah.
other thing that's cool about quercetin, what we found out was during COVID, that zinc and quercetin together really kind of prevented viruses from penetrating the cells. So, obviously, we can't say quercetin cures COVID or anything like that, but it
Right.
seemed to have a role in helping prevent the spread of COVID. So there is an anti-inflammatory component, an antihistaminic component, and of course an antiviral component to it. So I like quercetin. Again, it tends to be found in, guess what? Broccoli, apples, onions, and grapes. So all good, healthy foods for us.
Yeah, and if we don't eat enough of those things, supplementation is important for all of the things that we've just discussed. If you don't have a balanced diet, if it's just difficult, and especially for the elderly, sometimes the volume of food they eat or able to eat just isn't enough to deliver enough of these nutrients. So there are
Yeah.
some products, and I know you have one of them that sort of makes it simple to get all of this in balance. Tell me about that.
Yeah, the product we have is called Quercetin Immune Plus, and besides having everything we just talked about, it also has a compound called N-acetylcysteine in it. N-acetylcysteine is a mucolytic, which means it kind of helps break down mucus. So it's good for respiratory disease. So here we are coming into respiratory season,
Right.
and it's actually used. It has there's a prescription form of it that is actually used for kids that have cystic fibrosis or COPD diseases. And so, of course, that's not what we're using it for in our product. It's much lower dose, but N-acetylcysteine also your body converts into a chemical called glutathione. And where glutathione is really important is glutathione helps recharge the immune system. And glutathione is our major uh, antitoxin drug. In other words, it helps detox our bodies. And glutathione is kind of it's a sulfuric kind of compound. So a lot of people rather have taken N-acetylcysteine and let the body kind of convert it. But glutathione is also available all by itself. So, you get N-acetylcysteine from eating certain meat type foods because it comes in the form of cysteine, which converts in the body to N-acetylcysteine, which then converts to glutathione. So if you want to bypass all that, you just take N-acetylcysteine.
Got it. Got it. Got it. So I just take a couple capsules of this Quercetin Immune Plus each day, and I'm good to go. I've got all those components, and my immune system's tipped up.
That's right. It's easier to do that than buying each one of those components. I would do that, and it's
Yeah.
just a lot easier to do.
Well, and just a last little plug here for when you are buying supplements. these things are not FDA approved. You don't really know what's in them. So, that's why I strongly believe in buying just only the best, and pharmaceutical quality supplements, I think, are what you're known for.
Right. And, we, we don't skimp on quality. So unfortunately, our vitamins maybe cost a little bit more, but they're coming from quality companies. And so we're confident that if it's labeled with vitamin C, there's vitamin C in it, and it's a good quality vitamin C. It's not one that's contaminated with a lot of metals and stuff like that. Because if you're taking something every day and it's contaminated, you're not doing yourself any favor.
Sure.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
bottom line is the discount store vitamins, you don't know where those components have come from. Many of them India, China, where quality control is not great.
Yeah.
It can shift from month to month. And so it's worth the effort, I think, to get some good advice. Let's go the other direction here. There are some other compounds out there that really affect our immune system. The Chinese have been doing this for years, and that is using mushrooms.
Yeah, mushrooms are really, this is kind of my own personal view on mushrooms. I started thinking this last year, I really wanted to ramp up my own immune system. Can I do it? And one of the thoughts was get more mushrooms in your diet, right? And I mean, I think you had a few weeks ago, you had a gentleman in that was talking about mushrooms. And so, we have some different mushroom blends, powders that we brought in specifically. I even bought myself a mushroom coffee just to try, and I'm using it every day in the afternoon, but to help my immune system. But I like to get a blend of mushrooms. What we know historically, it doesn't seem to matter what continent people are from. They have used mushrooms in their culture because mushrooms are magically, synonymous with good health. Okay. Not only that, they taste good in general. So, I like mushrooms. My wife doesn't. So that's why she has to take a supplement because she does not like mushrooms. So some people don't. So one of the mushroom products that I have has 6 different mushroom blends in it, and they all have kind of a synergy effect, and that they really help with your immune system, that Th1, Th2 modulation. In other words, they're all working to help your white blood cells, which are your defending army against, viruses and bacteria.
Yeah. So this mushroom blend is called custom mushrooms. Is that right?
That's right. We try to keep it simple.
Okay, good. And it's got shiitake, reishi, chaga, cordyceps, turkey tail, and pearl oyster mushrooms. And as you said, I've done some reporting on this in the past, and all those things noted in Chinese medicine for centuries having an impact on our immune system. So, again, I just is this a capsule? Is it a powder? How do I use it?
Yeah, so our product is capsules, and the dose is 2 capsules a day. And I just find mushrooms really interesting in general. Cordyceps, you gotta know the backstory on this product. Cordyceps, it comes from from Tibet, from the mountains of Tibet, and it actually is a fungus that grows on the back of a special caterpillar. And it was used by royalty as an aphrodisiac. It is also, when it's naturally produced, it's the most expensive natural product in the world. However, now we make it synthetically. But I always wonder who was the monk or the person who ate that discovered its effects, because cordyceps is widely researched now. And we know it has an effect on your red blood cells too. So it helps provide oxygen to your cells, which helps provide ATP or energy to your muscles. So, it's kind of one of those products that you like to learn about. It's kind of magical. And you think to yourself, if I was on a deserted island, what would be one of the supplements I would take? Probably cordyceps would be right up there. Wow. So kind of an interesting product.
And tell me just a little bit about this mushroom powder you're putting in your coffee. I've tried some lion's mane mushroom in coffee in the past. It's supposedly a little mental stimulation. It kind of enhances focus and a little mental energy. What's your perception?
Yeah, that's, I just started using it, but that's exactly the reason why I went to lion's mane. Now that's not in the 6 blend that we just talked about, but the lion's mane is good for cognitive health. So I think about all my customers that have things like ADHD, especially if they're adults or people that are kind of concerned about dementia. There are some definite studies that shows that it has some help in cognitive improvement. So.
Yeah. And it doesn't taste, at least the product I tried, it doesn't taste that weird. It's a
It
little
tastes different. It tastes like you have mushrooms added to your coffee. So.
yeah, you can tell it's there. You can tell
Yeah.
it's there, right?
Yeah.
And then EGCG. EGCG is another compound that I think we want to be sure we talk about here because it's pretty powerful. You find that in green tea, right?
Find that in green tea. So that is, again, a great antioxidant. It seems to have some antiviral properties to it. We actually compound on prescription a kind of an ointment, and it's called Fly Safe is kind of the term. Now, again, this is not a non-FDA approved product. It has to be compounded on a prescription. But, this is made, I like this product for people who tend to be frequent flyers or tend to go out into areas where a large population of people are. So they're going into a loaded restaurant during cough and cold season, or maybe going to church, or even going into shopping centers, where there's a large amount of people. You kind of put a little bit of this paste on your, it's like a balm. You just put it on underneath your nose. And the thought is that it's going to help inactivate viruses that you might be exposed to. So it's kind of an interesting product.
Yeah, I've never heard of that. That's interesting. So if I'm immune compromised due to cancer therapy or any other reason, might be something to think about and talk to my doctor about.
Yeah, it's interesting. The mushrooms have been widely researched for cancer. Again, mixed results on different things, but so many of the mushrooms seem to have a anti-cancer, maybe more of a prevention effect, than for treatment. But it's really interesting, the research on that. There's been tons of research on that.
Yeah, well, it's just fascinating how our bodies and the plant world and our bodies both kind of come together, and
we're made to live together, right?
Yeah, we are indeed. We are indeed. Okay, so any last thoughts before we take off here?
I do know that there are some patients that have an aversion to mushrooms, and so we do have a product that we call Immune Defense. That is made of just straight beta glucan. The beta glucan is the active ingredient in many of the mushrooms. It's a polysaccharide active ingredient that gives some of that immune boosting. So this product we had before we had custom mushrooms, and it's a good alternative. And dose the same way, one daily. I don't think you take two, you take one daily. And so that's an alternative for all those people that are kind of turning their nose up to mushrooms right now because they don't want to take them.
I understand. Well, we talked about a lot of different things here. And if you have questions, that's one of the great things about Greg and his team at Fort Wayne Custom RX. They're always willing to step out from behind the glass and talk with you and kind of guide you. You tell them what's going on in your world and what you're concerned about. And they're always willing to lend a hand and offer what advice they have. That's one of the key things that I think makes Fort Wayne Custom RX such an important partner in your health, and one of the reasons that I've been a customer there for many years. Greg, thanks for being with us today. I hope you stay well through this cold and flu season.
Stay healthy.